Welcome, everyone. This is the National Kitchen and Bath Association, and if you're just joining us, this is our fourth webinar of the month on sustainable design. All of our webinars this month have generously been sponsored by the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation, and today's session is called Large-Scale Sustainability in Small-Scale Spaces with David Tracz. He's AIA, NCARB, and LEED GA certified. He's the co-founder of 3877 Architecture and Design based in Washington, D.C., and we do have Christine Whitmore here today, who's going to speak to all of us just for a few minutes about the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation. So if you're there, Christine, please.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And I can't imagine a better way to end this fabulous month of webinars than with David's presentation. So I'm very excited. However, welcome everyone to the NKBA webinar series, and particularly to today's session. I'm really pleased to be here on behalf of the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation to thank you for participating. CTEF is committed to professional development for tile installers, and that's why we support the NKBA webinar series and those who take continuing education so seriously. We're particularly excited about the theme of sustainability, and that's because ceramic and porcelain tile are truly sustainable materials, and when installed by the best of the best, certified tile installers who meet the requirements of qualified labor, the resulting installation is the ultimate in sustainability. It's not only truly beautiful, but it's sure to withstand the test of time while addressing the functional needs of those who use the space. It does full justice to your vision as a design professional. So I'm going to dig just a bit deeper about qualified labor, the Certified Tile Installer Program, and CTEF. Qualified labor refers to having the most qualified professional perform the specified scope of work rather than basing the decision on the lowest price. In the case of tile, these are the tile installers who, like you, are committed to their craft, they believe in professional development, and they take the time to stay current with the latest materials and methods. Because tile is a permanent finish, the lowest bid should not be the driving factor, but rather who is most qualified You'll find this language in the Tile Council of North America TCNA handbook, and it's also included in the Avitru, formerly Arcom master spec. The CTI designation identifies the professional installer who's reached a level of proficiency to independently and consistently produce a sound tile installation that displays good workmanship using tile industry standards and methods, along with time-tested, proven best practices in place here in the United States. The CTI program is the only third-party assessment of tile experience and knowledge recognized by the tile industry in the United States. And you can locate certified tile installers by using the zip code locator on the CTEF website. And finally, CTEF, which sponsors the CTI program, is supported by all segments of the ceramic tile industry. And you'll find lots of information on the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation website, ceramictilefoundation.org, including a blog with weekly updates. So thank you very much for your time and enjoy David's session.
All right, am I unmuted? Can you all hear me? Looks like it. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and launch in. The title of today's presentation, Large-Scale Sustainability in Small-Scale Spaces. My name is David Tracz. I am an architect in Washington, D.C. As Debbie mentioned, I'm one of two owners of the firm 3877. I do have a bunch of letters on my name. I'm assuming most of you know the AIA part. But NCARB is a National Council of Architectural Registration Boards, and that certification allows me to achieve reciprocity to multiple states in a fairly efficient fashion. So the other states recognize that there is some level of acceptance across the board, and it'll need to achieve that license in a faster fashion. And then on the lead side, we have been working on multiple projects across the board. In the most recent past, I've worked on a lead government building, a lead platinum interior space, a lead gold hotel, and most recently, the firm that I own is completing a LEED certified hotel in National Harbor, Maryland. So we're going to sort of be a little bit more focused and talk a little bit about small scale types of approaches to things, and we're going to leverage some of the things that I've done to my own home to help mitigate both energy usage and water usage and things like to increase the sustainable approach of my house, but also talk a little bit about solar panels and my approach there to helping to also mitigate the overuse and also power requirements for my home. So I'm going to just sort of jump right into it if I can get my screen to move to the next page. So one of the things that I wanted to start with was a little bit more broad brush. The strategies around developing sort of a sustainable approach for your house or a house that you are going to be working on. The first step is to identify sort of which direction you're going to go, whether it's going to be sort of from active solution where you're going to improve the efficiency or the usage of your home by utilizing either a heat pump system like what's displayed on the screen on the left-hand side, which is actually a geothermal heating and cooling system, or something like solar, which are again active processes by which you can reduce your sustainable footprint. But on the other side, there's a passive approach, which is planting some trees to help increase the shading on your home, or helping to start to mitigate some of the usage that you use for power, water, and any other sustainable components of your house. So it's very important to sort of start with this broad brush so that you can begin to establish what are your sustainable goals for your home or for whatever work you're planning to do moving forward. And really starting is this first strategy of developing either an active process or a more passive process. And we're going to talk about a couple of options today. I actually have gone through both approaches on my home just to make sure that I was balancing the budget of cost increase versus energy savings and where those two balanced. And I just saw a note about raising my sound level. Hold on one second. Let me try and figure out if I can do that. All right. Hopefully that's, and we've got a little bit better sound. If somebody
yes,
wants
David,
to...
you sound good. You sound
okay,
good.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, awesome. Trying to project into the computer, it's not the easiest thing. It's hard to not see anybody. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So some of the things that I first looked at on my own home was looking at whether I wanted to generate power or whether I wanted to increase the efficiency. And really what I decided to do in this particular instance was a little bit of both. But my first step was looking at the power options, and we're going to go into a little bit more deep dive into solar and the choices that I made personally and why I made them. But before that, we're going to go through a little bit more on the efficiency side for things like low flow water and retrofitting LED lights and thermostats and that kind of thing. So really, once we choose that sort of active passive approach, now the next step is looking at generation versus efficiency. And there are a couple of ways to generate power. Wind is another option. My particular location didn't for that. And actually, in the current home that I own, has a really nice south-facing flat roof, so it made for a very easy and uh, uh, sort of simple choice when we got into solar. The 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 positioning was correct, so then it was just a matter of talking to the vendor to try and find out how to get the pricing to the right opportunity. So as we'll dive a little bit more into how efficiency kind of helps. The other things that I was looking at with across the board, and I think anybody who's looking to do some sustainable upgrades on their home is trying to understand your constraints. You've got to make sure that you're coming at with some goals, like you're going to want to reduce water consumption, and how you might go about doing that is the next step. Making sure that you have a budget in mind about what you're willing to spend. I personally had an idea of, I wanted to make sure that I had a payback period that made a lot of sense. The home that I'm in now, I was planning to own it for 5 to 10 years. So anything that I was doing within this range was going to have that level of impact. And in a lot of cases too, I'm trying to wait for things. So for example, we'll talk a little bit about fixture replacement in the next couple of slides. I'm not going back and running through the house and replacing all of my MR16 light fixtures or light lamps. In turn, what I'm doing is waiting until they go out and then replacing them with a much more efficient light fixture and this lamp. In this particular instance, I'm going from a 75 watt MR16 down to a 6 watt MR16 that still has the warm glow and all of the pieces that you want, but the power consumption is significantly less. And that's kind of what I mean by balancing existing and replacement. It's kind of a waste of money to go through and take all of your light bulbs, throw them all out at the time, wait till they go out, and sort of evolve that process so that you're able to make those changes and make those efficiency changes without really wasting material, really. It's a different approach maybe for shower heads and other things that are water consumption based, but for the most part, those are the kind of approaches that we're talking about. But making sure that we're understanding when you're getting into a project like this, understanding your overall constraints and sort of making sure that you're setting yourself up for success. Now again, there we go. So as I mentioned in my particular instance, I had a nice house that has a good location. It is a townhouse, but it's a flat roof, and it did allow for an easy approach with a solar panel system to do a south-facing installation. In addition to that, I had been sort of slowly but surely, I have been replacing the MR16 system or light fixtures with a more efficient MR16 LED light fixture. In doing that, I actually did a little bit of research to sidebar a little bit on MR16 LED lamps. There are a lot out there on the market. You can go to Home Depot any day and them. Some key things for anybody who's looking to do that, to go look and understand what the color temperature might be for those light fixtures or those lamps. Most of them will tell you 3,000 to 2,700 Kelvin. 2,700 Kelvin is pretty good. It's sort of in the range of a warm incandescent. Some things that you want to pay attention to, though, is if that lamp is a dimmable lamp. For example, the lights you're replacing are constantly used for dimming. It's very important that you look at those LED lamps and that you're choosing one that not only has the 2,700 Kelvin color temperature, so it's a really warm lamp, also does something called warm to dim, which would mean that when it does dim and it slides, use a slide dimmer, it will actually get warmer as it goes. LEDs do not naturally do that. They generally turn gray or white. And it's very helpful if you want to have a whole room of warm lamps that all dim together. Even with its incandescent and LED, it's important that these lamps are warm to dim. So that's something that I've been very specifically looking for. I'll tell you, the lamps are a little more expensive, but it's a better result when you're sort of sitting in a space and wanting to watch TV or something like that and want to dim the lights to 10 or 5%, that you're using a warm to dim lamp. And then sort of the last thing that I'm going to go a little bit deeper into more at the end here today is the solar panel solution. So in a couple of instances, I reviewed a couple of different with a couple of different providers. We had one provider in the DC area that was only installing solar panels on sloped roofs for some reason. But we had located one that really had a good idea about installing solar, how to make it cost effective, and we worked some numbers so that we got it within a 5-year payback period for that. Since that was the biggest really investment overall that I've made, I wanted to make sure that it did have the 5-year payback period, so that I was coming out of it with a better solution. So, but before we go into power too much, I want to talk a little bit about water efficiency. So some of the things that that I've been doing in my home across the is just simply look at replacement of fixtures as things might break, or in my particular instance, they didn't actually have a washer dryer in the house when I bought it. So one of the key things was going and looking for some things that increase the efficiencies. If I can buy a fixture that I'm going to pay a little bit more for, but it provides a more efficient process for low flow kitchen faucets or a low flow toilets or a high efficiency washer, I'm going to go for that just to make sure that I'm again falling within that 5-year payback period, but also if it's doing that same work with less water, it just makes sense because I'm all across the board. I'd be wasting more money and paying more for water than I necessarily need to purchase. One other thing that in DC, they really help you to get rainwater barrels. You can actually sign up for a list where it's really one of the greatest things in DC. You can get on a list and they will actually bring you a rain barrel. So it helps to collect water, and then obviously you can utilize that water for watering the garden, potentially washing the car, depending on how much pressure you need, that kind of thing. But it's basically free water. So again, it gets back to not wanting to pay for water and that kind of thing if I don't need to. I see that kind of as a waste. And what you're also seeing on screen right now is that I have a plan over the next 3 to 4 months to begin looking into how I can install a tankless hot water. I have a gas supply in my house, and I plan to utilize that tankless hot water heater to minimize my electrical usage, but also minimize the amount of water that's being held in. Right now it's a 40-gallon tank. And the nice thing is they're direct fire, so they can go right outside, and it's pretty convenient, providing I can get exhaust and intake. So I'm working on that right now. Just wanted to pause for a minute as we're sort of working our way out of water. If anybody had any questions, thoughts, or queries on sort of that general approach. I think I have things come up on the screen as questions come by. So far it's been pretty well. So I think, again, one of the things that I've been sort of steadily doing after determining the solar power usage is really starting to minimize the amount of power that I'm using on a daily basis. So again, in this particular instance, I'm showing that Green Creative warm white 6-watt LED lamp. I actually do have some PAR lamps in my house, which have also been replaced with a warm Green Creative warm white lamp, but it's a PAR lamp. I don't know if anybody, assuming everybody on the call knows what a PAR lamp is, hopefully. In addition to that, I also went back and replaced my existing thermostat with a learning and a digital thermostat. And one of the things that I think, I just saw a question come up about how does reclamation, and when you say reclaiming, what are you talking about, water or power? I'll wait till see if that question comes back up again. But went back and replaced the existing thermostat in my house with a learning thermostat, whether it's a Nest or a couple of others, water. So I think in California there are a lot of advantages to doing. I think there especially there's a lot of encouragement to limit the water consumption. I don't know if they have the same opportunities that DC has with Rain Barrel, but one of the things that I'm going to get to at the last part of my presentation today is a website where they aggregate all of the sustainable tax credits and or financial opportunities that are out there that are presented by power and water companies. And it's an excellent website. I highly recommend everybody to take a look at it if you're looking to do sustainable improvements on your home, because there are some ways to do that. Good point. So yes, I know in a drought place there probably is some restrictions on water storage. So that's one thing that you'd want to check your local jurisdiction. Again, I live in the District of Columbia, which fortunately or unfortunately we have a lot of water all the time. But I know that isn't always the case. So I would definitely take a look at some of your local jurisdiction requirements. So again, in addition to that, so the learning thermostat, one thing that I will say over the past 2 years, it has done a really wonderful job of actually pushing myself to be better about setting the temperature in my home. It does a lot of testing of you to get to a good temperature setting that you feel comfortable with, but maybe pushing your limits a little bit on heat or cool, depending on the time of year, particularly when you're out of the house. It'll tend to let it rise more than maybe you normally would. But I will say over this past year, over the past 2 years that I've had it, it does a really good job of tracking how much energy consumption we've limited in the time that we've lived there. And actually reporting is really one of the things that I like about the Nest in particular. And I'm assuming some of the others do the same thing. But it gives you reporting on how much energy you're saving over that year-long or a month-long period of time. And it actually pits you against other people who have Nests in particular. So your little competition going on about energy savings. So trying to best your neighbors. Not that there's any particular reward, but it's kind of entertaining. Okay, so now I have an opportunity to talk a little bit more in depth on the solar piece. And I feel like I'm moving a little bit faster than I wanted to at this pace, but this is the solar side is something that I want to talk about a little more in depth, and can go a little bit more detail. What this page represents is what was given to me by the company that I was purchasing my solar. So the center image describes the number of panels that they were going to place on my house. In this instance, they were placing 12 panels. 4 rows of 4, 16 panels. And in addition to that, we were looking at a couple of things across the board. They were running a special on this particular week, which if you look at the purchase price and the payback period, it falls very clearly within my 5-year goal. So that's very important. But one of the things that you'll note off to the side here in handwriting, and part of the reason I use this document for this description, is that there's another cost comparison that's running side by side. On the left, you see the contract price of about $4,000. And then to the right, you see a contract price of about $13,568. And I don't know if you guys are familiar out there at all with solar panels and how generation and how that benefit is identified and quantified. But with a solar panel, when it's installed on your roof, in addition to the power that is being generated and sent back into your home through your smart meter, you also get a benefit of something called an SREC. And what an SREC does is it is basically a commodity on an open market or an SREC market, where you can still hear background noise. Is it better now? Sorry, somebody walked by the meeting room. I'm going to move to a location in the room, so hopefully it'll be a little bit better. Okay. Okay, is that better? All right. So what an SREC does is because it's a commodity on an open market, there's some fluctuation in cost, but it's all defined by local jurisdictions have the opportunity or the requirement by law to purchase a certain amount of renewable energy. And because they're required to purchase a certain amount of renewable energy, they have to pay for that energy, and therein is where the SREC market was created. So in DC, the PEPCO, which is our power generation company, is required to use 5% of its energy generation from renewable sources. In addition to that, there is a penalty for every megawatt that they do not use from a renewable source. It's about $500. And what that does is it actually maybe almost artificially sets this SREC market at around $450 to $490 because it's just below that penalty amount. And what one SREC is 1 megawatt of generation. I should mention that. So it takes a long time. Obviously, this particular panel array is a 4 kilowatt system, and as you can see, size of system 4.24 kilowatts. And so it will take a long time for me to get to a megawatt to sell that. And in this particular instance, the company that I was purchasing these solar panels from actually kept the licensing to the SRECs. So they go through the market, they sell those SRECs, and they generate revenue for their company. In turn, what I got was a reduced cost in the installation of the panels. So I still get the benefit of the power generation, but I don't get the benefit of the sale of the SRECs. So I'm hoping that's making sense to everybody that's on there right now. And to be honest, I think that was really a good solution for me. It really reduced my payback period significantly. It did give me a tax credit, but it also overall reduced my initial costs. One thing that I will say while I was reviewing this process, and the next slide on this is, I actually also asked if one of the things that you may or may not have noted is that my power consumption on that particular panel setup was not enough to power my entire home. And one of the questions that I asked of this company was, what would happen if I were to actually put in a system that would generate enough power for my house? So this page and the cost that's described here is basically what it would have cost me to do the panels that were strong enough to generate most of the power from my house. And again, that might fluctuate winter over summer, that kind of thing. But what it would have done really created more than enough power, or close to more than enough power for my home for the entire year. And you can see down at the bottom here, they have an analysis that describes my electric bills prior to, and then what the change would have been had we installed that higher level panel system. This was really an intriguing process to me because it gave me an idea of what the real cost would be to generate all of this power. And unfortunately, it would have been about an 8-year payback, or actually 9 if you round up, a 9-year payback period, and that just wasn't what I was willing to do at the time. Unfortunately, I didn't have the cash for it at the time. I will tell you, in hindsight, if I had had that money, then I may have gone this route. The 8-year still was kind of within my 5 to 10 year range if I was going to stay in the house. And I've also noticed a bit of an uptick in the value of my home. It's been about a $10,000 to $15,000 increase in property value, and they mentioned in this financial summary report. But I also have had the home appraised twice since I've done this, and in both instances, it's actually been funny. They actually missed that there were solar panels on the house, even though you can see them. after reevaluating the valuation and noting that solar panels were there, it was a pretty clear increase of about $10,000 to $15,000. So it's been a great great approach. I think it's really made a big difference in our overall power consumption, and certainly my electric bills are considerably less. It was a little bit of a process to install. It took about a day and a half to install and connect through the smart meter system. But it went in very quickly. And actually, one of the best things that I like about that system is that I can actually track on a daily basis how much power is being consumed or being produced, and what the production is for each of the panels to make sure that everything is functioning appropriately. One of the things that you'll note here is that they didn't get in quite all the panels that they thought they were going to. They did get them all in. They had to wait one. It turned out there was a skylight on my roof that I didn't know about, that actually doesn't come down to the ceiling, which was kind of interesting. But as you can see, we're producing about 10.5 kilowatt hours on a solid day. This was very recently. Obviously, it was a partly cloudy day, but we did pretty well on production. And I can actually go back all the way through the year and see how each day has been produced, and track it according to weather. It does a little less efficiently in the winter months, but it's been really great to see and to track all this power generation. It's really very exciting. So I really enjoyed that. One thing I did want to snip, I did go to the SREX market for, this is actually for DC, so this is tracking the cost of an SREC over basically the entire year from May 18 to May 19. And you can see and track that the price of an SREC has gone sort of up and down, but largely stayed within sort of a $300 to $400 range. And I think this is not always going to be the case. I know DC has a very specific market, and as I mentioned, they also have some laws that make sure that the SREC market is intact, and it also depends on which jurisdiction you're in. Some of them, Jersey, Pennsylvania, all use some SREC areas, so it's been really good to sort of track. Again, this would have been a revenue thing for me, but in the end, it just used it. I leveraged it to make the panels a little bit cheaper, or the installation of the panels a little bit cheaper. So one thing I did want to touch on, I haven't, and it was interesting when I was interviewing companies to do the solar panels for my house. One of the guys that I talked to had suggested this system. It was very new at the time. This was about 2.5 years ago, and it's still fairly new even now. It's basically called a PVT. So it's a photovoltaic thermal system where I think some folks that may be on this call have seen a solar thermal approach where you use that to heat water. You use the basically black panels to heat water, and then that helps to manage your hot water generation. And this is actually a system that does both generates power as well as heats water. So it's an interesting system. It was something that I looked at briefly, the technology at the time, and even now, actually, after doing some sort of research for this webinar, the technology for the time now has not really hit its stride yet, but I think it's something to pay attention to in the long run. Anytime that you can do two things with one thing makes a lot of sense, and that increases efficiencies. So it's always intriguing to me to sort of how the next level of generation and the next level of sustainability can move towards. So as I get into sort of this is really my last slide, and hopefully I haven't been going too fast. I've been trying to pay attention to questions as they came up, but I can take some at the end as well. One thing that I would suggest, and this goes to the person that was asking the question about California in particular, one of the things that I would highly recommend anybody checking out, regardless of what you're thinking or planning to do on your home, that you check out this website. It's Desire USA, DSIRE-USA.org, and then you can kind of navigate to these areas. But what it does is it breaks down financial incentives and tax incentives by jurisdiction or by state initially, and then you can look at ways that you can generate or leverage money available from either the jurisdiction or in the form of a tax credit or potentially in the form of cash in some cases to purchase sustainable products. I brought up one financial incentive from DC. This is from Pepco, which is our power generation company, and they can help you to purchase natural gas water, high capacity heat pump water heaters, a lot of different things. So it's something that I really highly recommend that anybody who lives in anywhere, that this is really your first stop to start looking at ways that you can leverage either federal or state funds or incentives to help you in your sustainable goals. This gets back to that sort of budgeting idea that I was talking about earlier. If you can find that you can budget a dollar that might be a little bit higher because you're going to get money back on things from either your jurisdiction or the power generation company, it makes a lot of sense. So try to make sure you're using all the things that might be available to you at a given time. So same thing. In fact, actually, in almost everything that I've done, whether it's been the fire efficiency washing machine, the installation of solar panels, wherever I've been able to leverage either a federal or a state tax credit, I've been trying to do that. So it just helps to fund the program, basically. So that was really the last piece. I think I've been talking like a feverish rate, so wanted to see if there are any other questions or answers out there, and things that maybe I didn't touch on or anything like that, and open it up to the crowd. And otherwise, Debbie, take it over.
Okay, well, thanks, David. There was one or two questions. Let's see. Going back to the washer and dryer, there was someone asking if it was a one-unit combo. They weren't sure.
No, that one is just a washer.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then obviously the Sustainable Credits website that you just showed, was that the one that you just had on the board there?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. Great. Thanks. Are there any other questions for David at this time? We're taking questions. We have some time. And I don't know if you can see. Here's one. What about maintaining solar panels? Budget for this is included in payback, or how long to replacement? Climate specific issues. There's a lot in that question.
Yeah. So I know that the panels that I have were warranted for 25 years at the full production. So I think that was also an objective of mine, and keeping it under the 5-year payback period is making sure that payback was under their warranted production period. I think that's something that you've got to do a lot of research on when you're looking at the panel options that are out there to make sure that you're going to be able to maintain as full production as possible for as long a time as possible. But again, that involves a little bit more research into the panel systems that are available and out there. They get better on a monthly basis, so it's pretty amazing.
Okay. And then someone's asking, could you please review the PV /T option again? Will we be able to? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So this particular product, I'd done a little bit of internet research. I only had heard that it was out there. There was only one company that I could locate that actually was in the process of manufacturing it. I haven't found much more than that. But the intent is that it's a solar power generating system, but it also because they're dark colored solar panels, they're able to leverage that to run water through it, and it helps to heat the water for your house.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Are there any other questions? Just waiting here to see if there might be a question or two. Okay, we do have time for questions, so take advantage of David being here and
Yeah.
ask some questions. He is scheduled to be with us for at least another 15 minutes. Someone's saying excellent presentation, David.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's see. Not seeing anything right now. Oh, wait a second or two.
Yeah, no
Okay,
worries.
here's one. Any issue with roof leakage once solar panels are installed?
Oh, great. That's actually a really good question. So, and this is something that definitely work through with your installation company. The company that I worked with has a flat fee of $750 to remove the panels so that we can remove and reinstall the panels so that we can access roof leakage or any other issues. Um, and and it's been um, I haven't had to repair anything yet. I should also mention that the supports for the solar panels span, because this is because it's a townhouse, they span party wall to party wall. So they don't actually sit on my roof; they sit above. They kind of float above the roof. But even still, if I need to do any work on the roof, there's a $750 flat fee for removal and replacement or reinstall of the solar panels if work needs to be done. But make sure you negotiate that ahead of time.
Thank you, David. So questions are coming in now. So
I
someone's
saw
asking,
another
how
one.
did you, yeah, I see a bunch of them. Well, I'm trying to go from the top and go down. So when you
Okay.
researched, what criteria did you use?
For the panel system,
I, I'm, I'm said when you researched, what criteria did you use? I'm assuming so.
yeah, I mean, a lot of that was just trying to understand power consumption, warranty period, and then how much it would offset of my power usage. So those were kind of the key pieces, and then obviously cost of the panel against how much offset it was going to have.
Okay. And then here's another one. How important is it to check into how tight the home building is, such as air infiltration tests?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is that kind of falls into that sort of past idea that we talked about at the beginning. That is a really great thing to check on. It's a very easy thing to assess. I know a lot of jurisdictions will do it, like power companies and things like that will do it for free or a low cost. Um, but I do think that is a really important thing to check into. I own a very old, I own a house that was built in the 30s, so it's good in some areas, but not great. So I think that's something that you I should look at and analyze in that first sort of strategy session of determining active versus passive.
Okay. And then someone's asking, how did you choose the company that you used?
It was really based on word of mouth. People that I talked to a couple of general contractors who had used people in the past, and they I ended up narrowing it to two. One guy was actually that suggested this PVT system, but he was a little more unresponsive than the Solar Solutions company that I ended up using. Um, they just had a really good presentation. They really analyzed everything to where I understood what my payback period was, what my cost was going to be, and where I needed to go.
Okay.
I
So
did
here's
see a question. I saw a question come up about uh, the thermostats with a hot water. I think it was either a hydronic system or something along those lines.
I'll
I
read it to you
don't.
if you want me to.
Yeah, if you could.
Yep. How efficient is a Learn thermostat for homes that have floor radiant heat, which typically keep an even heat and may not be as efficient with short temperature fluctuations?
Yeah, I mean I haven't had a lot of experience with those systems with the digital thermostats. I think one of the things that is great about the learning thermostats is that they, over that period of time, will start to learn and understand how your system reacts. Um, you know, it's also a question of whether it's compatible with those kinds of systems. Um, I know in a previous home that I owned, I had a separate heating and a separate cooling system, and the learned thermostats won't work with those types of systems. So, um, in that instance, it may not be the right product to use, but we need to do a little more recon on what the options are out there and how well they adapt to a hydronic system like that.
Okay, and then there's a question here about tankless H2O. Is this the same as point of use?
It is. Well, so point of use technically is really just a small heater right at the faucet, and those can be used pretty well, but a tankless is more of a whole house approach.
Okay, and then there's a question here about addressing passive solar.
Mhm.
So they're wondering if you can address that, please.
Yeah, so passive, it takes a lot to, I really boiled it down to one image, because the thought was looking at this from an existing home and things that you could do to your existing house. A lot of times passive solar has a lot to do with, excuse me, with the lighting of the house and positioning and shape of the home. And that also has a lot to do with the current climate, where it is, which climate zone the home is in, and where the home is being placed on a specific lot, whether um, and whether it's south facing, and how you can take advantage of the available things that are out there. For example, north and south facing, you really want to take advantage of north or south light, or sorry, north light, and you want to try and shield the home a little bit on the south facade. Um, there's things that we want to talk about with regard to overhang. You want to look at areas where wind is kind of coming from, which direction it's coming from, and how you can help to take advantage of that. It also has to do with the shape of the house, where you can allow the chimney effect to sort of roll through the house when windows are open. It really has it has a lot more intricacies to it than to kind of cover in a short period of time. But I think that's something that I could go into in a little bit greater detail at another.
Okay, great, David. And then there's one here. Do you consider sustainability when designing interior space, and is the space used now and in the future?
Uh, Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of what we work on is trying to take advantage of particularly natural light for interior spaces. But we'll also, we'll talk. This kind of gets back to we'll talk about materials that we're using, whether they have a level of recycled content to them, if they're easily recycled, like metals and other things like that. We're always trying to pay attention to any of that while we're selecting materials. We generally we always try to focus on HVAC systems that have some level of major level of efficiency. Um, we also are trying to look at ways to do heat exchange and other things that when the opportunity presents us. So when you're exhausting air, trying to pull the heat out of that air before it leaves the space. But it's one of the things that's a key component on all of our radar.
Okay, let's see. Um, I've asked how to determine the payback period of solar panels, and you said 5 years. Determined over 23 years based on the cost of the solar divided by the payback per year. I'm guessing that they're looking for a formula here.
If when you're talking where.
Yeah, and did I read that correctly? Let's see. They're wondering about the payback period for solar panels. You had said
Yeah,
it's 5 years.
yeah, it all it all depends on the home power consumption. Again, this is sort of some of the things that there are two ways to attack that program. There's the power consumption, so ways to limit the amount of power usage that you're using, and changing out lights, lamps themselves, and each of your light fixtures can make a big difference on that over a period of time. Buying an energy efficient product, so trying to drop the amount of usage that you have, but also you want to watch for what kind of solar output you get at what value, because there are different grades of solar panels. So you can buy a lower grade solar panel that powers less if you can limit the amount of usage that you have in your home. It's hard to, it's a very specific balance, and I think some of the things that what really made this make sense here was the sort of the way that this company was structuring the purchase of the panels. As they kept that commodity item, the SREC, and kept that for themselves, they were able to lower the price of the installation to a more manageable amount. I hope that gets them what they need.
Is there a formula for determining the payback period?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's basically the cost of the panels against the cost of your power for that period of time.
Okay, good. Someone's asking about if you could elaborate on rainwater storage systems. Is a metal roof required or not?
In my particular instance, we have a flat roof, or flat-ish roof. It slopes at a very slow rate. It's a single slope. And it's just, all I do is off the gutter, it goes right into the rain barrel, and then the rain barrel has an overflow that will go down into the drain. So that could work. It's a little harder to do multi-slope roofs where you have two directions. You can still do it. It just means you'll have to have two barrels, one in each of the rain leaders.
Okay, so that doesn't necessarily
it's really
need to be a metal roof. Yeah.
It does not.
Yeah.
There can be I mean, this is not potable water,
Right.
so there can be particulates and things like that in the water because of coming off your roof. So
Good point. Okay, well, we're getting ready to wrap things up here today. If anyone has any more questions, we can take them now. If not, then I want to thank the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation for sponsoring today's session and all of our sessions for the month of April. I also want to thank you, David, for participating and presenting all this great information. And
cool.
I'm sure if anyone has any further questions, they can reach out to you if you're okay with that.
Absolutely. My email address is on this slide, and feel free.
Awesome. Great. Okay,
Cool.
well, thank you everybody for being here. It was really interesting and a lot of great questions today. Christine, I want to thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, David. I learned a lot. It was really fascinating.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
All right. Well, safe travels, David and Christine. I hope to be in touch with you again. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay,
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.